Page 266, Chapter 16. Herodes, or Herod, and Johannes. At the time, however, when Emmanuel was staying in Nazareth, news about him reached Herodes. And when Emmanuel's speech was brought to Herodes's ears, he spoke to his people, quote, "Surely this is Johannes, who carries out the custom of the initiation, who has arisen from the dead, and who therefore possesses such mighty powers." For Herodes had seized Johannes, bound him, and put him into prison because of Herodias, the wife of his brother Philippus, or Philip, and had him beheaded. However, it came to pass previously that Johannes the Initiator, or the one who carries out the initiation, reprimanded Herodes, saying, quote, "It is not good that you have taken Herodias, because you have committed a breach of trust," or breach equals break equals adultery, "with her, with your brother's wife, and therefore you must be punished according to the law." For this he wanted to kill Johannes, but was afraid of the people, because they considered this man to be a prophet. However, as Herodes was celebrating his birthday, the daughter of Herodias danced before them, and Herodes was greatly pleased. He therefore promised her, with an unlawful oath, that it should be given to her of him whatever she demanded of him. And as she had been induced accordingly by her mother, she said, quote, "Give me the head of Johannes on a silver platter." But the daughter of Herodias wept while saying this, not just because she was surging with love for Johannes, but also because she was devoted to his teaching. And the king was pleased that Herodias had persuaded her daughter to demand the head of Johannes the Initiator, or the one who carries out the initiation, because in this wise he was not guilty in the eyes of the people, because he had indeed taken the oath, so he thought. But Herodias' daughter did not know that Herodes was one with, or had agreed with, her mother already before the dance, that she was to demand the head of Johannes. And thus Herodes sent someone and had Johannes beheaded in prison, and his head was carried in on a silver platter and given to the girl. She kissed the brow of the decapitated head, wept bitterly, and said, quote, "I did not know that love tastes so bitter." Then she brought the head of Johannes to her mother. His disciples and disciplesses then came, took Johannes' body, and buried it. Then they went to Emmanuel and told him what had happened. And when Emmanuel heard this, he was overcome with fear, and he retreated on a boat to a deserted area. However, when the people heard that, a crowd of people followed him on foot from the towns. And Emmanuel saw the large crowd from the water, and he felt sorry for them. So he went ashore and taught them in the quote, teaching of the prophets, and also healed 2 people suffering from evil thoughts. Feeding of the 50, verse 20. In the evening, his 7 disciples and 4 disciplesses, who were accompanied him, came to him and said, quote, "This area is deserted, and the night is falling over the land. Let one of us go away for the small crowd of people, so that he may buy food and drink in the villages." But Emmanuel said, "It is not necessary that you go away. Give them food and drink." They replied, "Here are nothing but 15 loaves of bread and 30 fish." And he said, "Bring them here, for it will be enough for everyone." And he told the people to sit down, and took the 15 loaves of bread and the 30 fish, spoke venerable words, broke the loaves of bread and the fish into pieces, and gave them to his disciples and disciplesses, and these gave them to the people. And they all ate and were full. And they took up what was left of chunks, 2 half baskets full. And there were about 50 human beings who had eaten, and everyone had enough. On the sea, verse 27. And soon afterward, Emmanuel asked 5 of his disciples to enter the boat and proceed across the sea to the city in advance of him, while he would dismiss the people. And after he had sent the people away, he climbed up a small elevation or hill, alone, in order to rest and regain his strength that had departed from him. And so he was there alone in the evening. And the disciples' boat was at that time not far from the land, on the sea, and being imperiled by the waves. For the wind was against them, or had risen up, and was blowing strongly, and the storm that approached threatened them. But since Emmanuel saw this from the small elevation or hill, he came to meet them in a small, flat boat on the slowly increasing waves in the sea, so that he might caution them and lead them back to shore. And when his 5 disciples saw him on the small boat coming along on the water, they were very terrified and said, quote, "He is a ghost, and he is hovering on the water," and they screamed in fear. But soon Emmanuel came closer, and when they saw the flat boat on which he rode, and he called out to them and spoke to them by saying, quote, "Be comforted, it is I. Do not be afraid. Turn around and go ashore." "Master, is that you?" Petrus asked, nonetheless. Emmanuel said, "Truly it is I." But Petrus answered him and said, quote, "Master, if it is you, then let me come to you on the water." But Emmanuel said, "You are safe there in the boat. Stay there and do not be afraid. Understand and know that the boat in the water is carrying you, and it will carry you if you remain therein. Do not doubt your knowledge and trust, so that the boat in the water will be a firm foundation to you." But Petrus wanted to get out of the boat, so that he might go on the water to Emmanuel. But immediately, or at that same instant/moment, a loud thunder ripped through the howling storm that approached, and Petrus was startled and swayed or stumbled, fell into the water, and began to sink, and screamed, "Emmanuel, help me!" Emmanuel rowed to him, quickly stretched out his hand, and grabbed him, saying, "O you of little knowledge, why are you frightened? And why did you become doubtful in your fright, and leave the secure boat? The power of your knowledge gives you the trust that you should follow, but you suffer harm, as you have just experienced, because you do not trust. You trusted in my words before the thunder came, but then you were frightened and doubted. And so the power of the knowledge left you, and your trust disappeared. Never doubt the power of your trust, which arises from your spirit, or consciousness, and which is a part of insight, or rationality, itself, and therefore knows no limits of the might. Behold, there was a little bird that circled at great heights, and sang and rejoiced about life, when a gust of wind came, and made it sway, and so it suddenly doubted the power of its skill, or flying skill, plummeted down, and was killed. Therefore, never doubt the power of your trust, and never doubt your knowledge, when the sageness, or intellect, proves to you the law of the creation in truth and correctness. And Petrus stepped back into the boat, and Emmanuel commanded that they should all go to shore, without anxiety or fright. So they set aside their anxiety and their fright, and rowed to shore, whereupon the storm also rose, but they still escaped from it. But those who were in the boat marveled and said, quote, "You are truly a master of the spirit or consciousness, of sageness or intellect, and of the trust, and thus one who has knowledge about the laws of the creation. No one like you has ever yet been born among us, nor has any prophet known to us has had such might of the trust and the sageness." But Emmanuel answered, "I tell you, there are great masters of the spiritual or consciousness-based power and of the knowledge and the wisdom than I. There are greater masters of the spiritual power and the knowledge and the wisdom than I, and they are those of our manifoldly distant forefathers of the spirit worlds, or level of Arahat Athersata and Ptaah, etc. And great are they also, who came from the firmament, or outer space. And greatest among them is the Ishwish, and he is the ruler over the new human species on the earth, or the modern human beings. However, above him stands the creation, whose laws he loyally follows and respects. Therefore, he is also not almighty, as is only given to the creation itself. Thus there are also limits set for him, who is called Ishwish, and who stands above emperors and kings in the knowledge and in the wisdom, as the word says. But human beings believe without knowledge and immaturely, thus they believe an Ishwish to be the creation, and serve a confused teaching, as was falsified by the distorters of their writings. Thus, since human beings believe in an Ishwish, they therefore do not know about the truth of the creation. For an Ishwish is a human being, as also we are. But the difference is that in his spirit or consciousness, and knowledge, and in the wisdom, in the sageness or intellect, and in the love, he is 1,000 times greater than you, and greater than all human beings of the earth. But he is not the creation, which is unending, and which also has no visible form, for it is only power, or spirit energy. Thus, the Ishwish is also a created being, or Wesen, of the creation, which, according to the non-understanding sense of the human being, or according to human opinion, has no beginning and no end. And after the storm, they went across the sea and came ashore at Gennesaret. And when the people in that place saw him, they sent messengers around the land and brought to him 11 who were sick. So he healed those for whom it was given to him to do so, while he had no might over the sicknesses of others. Then 3 who were sick asked him if they may just touch the hem of his garment, so they would be healed, as they had heard from others. And thus it came to pass, a woman who touched the hem of his garment became well, but the others remained unhealed of their sickness.